continues on NRC's campus, we here at the Investigative Bureau would like to assure you that we, along with our junior detectives, are doing everything within our power to keep you informed, including offering another installment of this series for your entertainment. We are back at it again with 10 wacky headlines twisted to fit the universe of Twist, revealed in quiz-style formatting. You'll be given some fabricated backstory as well as 3 culprits to pick from, and after a bit of quiz-style thinking time, I'll be revealing who actually did the deed and the whys and hows behind their actions. Along the way, I'll also be highlighting reports made by our lovely junior detectives, and if you feel particularly inspired or have witnessed some strange occurrences on NRC's campus, you can use the form linked in the description below to submit your very own report for review. It should go without saying by now, but yet again, thank you to all of our junior detectives, regardless of whether or not your report is being included in this video. Now, while these stories are inspired by EN server story content, the spoilers for them will be light if they exist at all. However, one of our headlines does contain major story spoilers for one of the limited time events, but it will have a separate warning ahead of it, so you will be thoroughly prepared to encounter it. Now then, it's time for our very first headline, submitted by Junior Detective Nothing to See Here. What tale do you have for us today? Brawl breaks out on NRC campus due to photo teasing. On an otherwise ordinary day, Student A accidentally dropped a photograph of themselves from childhood that had been sent to him by a family member. Before he could pick it back up, Student B had grabbed it and started to tease Student A about it. After a bit of back and forth, with Student B refusing to return the photo or stop the teasing, Student A decided to solve the argument with his fists. After a bit of a scuffle and a few spells cast, faculty were able to separate the two, with Student A getting the photo back and both students receiving detention. Our suspects in this case are Azul, who was known to dislike his forbidden lore being mentioned, Apple, whose younger self looked a lot like his grandma, and Deuce, whose mother has a plethora of baby pictures of him dressed as a rabbit. Who done it? Now, I don't think anyone would have made a connection between Apple and Marja given their age difference unless they'd seen pictures of young Marja, which is unlikely. Azul has already destroyed most of his baby photos, and I doubt he'd risk having one just casually in his wallet, so that only leaves Deuce. So I guess I gotta go with him. But what say you, Junior Detective? According to their report, it was Deuce who had dropped the photo. He had recently gotten mail from his mom, who had found some old photos of when Deuce was a child during his bunny phase. The photo in question included both himself and his mom in cute bunny ears celebrating the annual town event, White Rabbit Fest. When another student picked up the photo, Deuce had tried to keep it together and was doing a good job until this student B made a comment about his mom. At that point, Deuce could no longer hold back and threw the first punch. Once separated by staff, Deuce explained why he got into the fight, leading to the other student also getting reprimanded, and the two of them ending up in detention together. Thank you, Nothing to See Here, for your delightful tale. Now then, it is on to our next headline. NRC student steals campus farm chicken, claims it's their emotional support chicken. On an otherwise mundane morning, the cafeteria ghosts were collecting eggs from the campus chicken coop for breakfast when they realized one of their best layers was missing. The coop was inspected for holes and openings, but the staff couldn't find anything amiss that would let a chicken escape, and there were no signs of a struggle from a wild animal having gotten in. A small investigation was launched to find the missing chicken, but campus security simply assumed the bird had run off and weren't taking the issue too seriously. That was until a student was caught running down Main Street in pursuit of a suspiciously chicken-shaped cloth. When the blanket was pulled off the mystery object, it was found to be an actual chicken, frightened out of her mind. The student claimed the bird was their emotional support chicken that had gotten loose from their dorm, but the chicken explained that they were kidnapped in the middle of the night and told to make as many eggs as they could by their kidnapper. The student was reprimanded and the chicken returned, thankfully unharmed, to the campus coop. Our suspects in this case are Deuce, who is known to like eggs, Apple, who is known to like farming, or Grim, who is known to like food. Who done it? In this case, our chicken napping culprit was in fact Grim, who had heard that eggs came from chickens, and in an effort to boost his gym scores, decided to kidnap a bird to give himself a steady supply of eggs with which to bribe Coach Vargas. Given how good Grim is with animal linguistics, he was able to somehow convince the chickens to open the coop from the inside. And once he was in, grabbed the first bird he saw and ran away with them. The chicken, of course, protested, but Grim managed to get them all the way back to Ramshackle, threatening to cook them with his flames if they did not give him eggs. When the prefect awoke at the loud commotion being caused by Grim and the chicken, the dire beast had the bright idea of covering the bird with a throw blanket to hide his crime. But this allowed the chicken to stealthily escape the dorm while Grim was preoccupied lying to you. Once Grim noticed the bird was missing, a chase ensued, which eventually led to Grim and the chicken being discovered on Main Street. Grim, Grimmy Grim Grim, when will you learn? Our next headline was submitted by Junior Detective Sewmuchtodo with their lovely tale of NRC student accidentally poisons ramshackle prefect. During the morning walk to campus, NRC students Ace Trapola and Deuce Spade were approached by a rather panicked Grim who was screaming about how you was dying. The students rushed to assist their friend, only to discover the prefect curled up on the couch, sweating and shaking. They quickly brought the prefect to the infirmary, where the nurse revealed that they had come in the day before with a cold. After some time, it was discovered that something magical was worsening their condition. Grim claimed they'd had a few visitors the night before who had attempted or intended to help the prefect with their cold. An investigation was then launched to determine which of these visitors might be responsible for the prefect's worsening condition. Our suspects in this case are Malleus, who had come by to chat with the prefect about repairing a broken gargoyle they discovered in the basement and has experience with odd fey remedies. Jamil, who had been told of the prefect's condition by a very worried Kaleem and who also knows a lot about poisons. Or Azul, who had been in the infirmary when the prefect came by and has been known to assist poor unfortunate souls through magical means. Who done it? This one is very tricky since I can easily see all of these folks attempting to help with some sort of medicine, so I think I'm just gonna have to hand it over to our junior detective to explain. According to them, it was Jamil who had accidentally worsened the prefect's condition, but through no real fault of his own. Jamil had been persuaded by Kaleem to make some medicine for them as a thank you gift for helping catch and wash his magic carpet a few days prior. What the Vice House Warden was unaware of, however, was that one of the magical plants in the medicine he'd made could not be tolerated by the prefect's otherworldly body, despite it being a common remedy in the Scalding Sands. Since it was an accident and Jamil had good intentions, his only punishment was having to watch over Grim until the prefect recovered, an idea that Grim was delighted by, demanding his own compensation in the form of food for emotional damages. Thank you so much to do for this delightful tale. Our next headline is NRC student reportedly rejects therapy, meditates in coffin instead. One of the school therapists became concerned after a student missed several scheduled sessions in a row and alerted staff to the serial skipping case. Another of that student's dorm members was questioned since they were responsible for taking the skipper to these sessions. However, that student claimed they dropped their compatriot off right outside the office and even witnessed them going inside. Not fully trusting this testimony, a search was launched for the missing student, and they eventually were found inside one of the mirror chamber's gates. The student alleged that meditating in the coffin was part of their therapy, as reflecting on death was tantamount to their recovery. But the staff, therapist, and student responsible for dropping off this individual did not buy it for a second. The skipping student was reprimanded, and their therapy sessions extended to make up for the lost time. Our suspects in this case are Leona, who was notorious for skipping classes and napping in odd places; Jamil, who may have just wanted a quiet moment alone to be at peace; or Iria, who doesn't really like talking to folks outside of his immediate family. Who done it? In the case of coffin meditation, it was none other than Iria, who was stowing away to the mirror chamber to avoid social confrontation. After his overblood incident, the school and his parents insisted that Iria attend a few therapy sessions to work through the underlying emotions of his outburst. But Iria, being the antisocial king he is, did not want to offer such private information to a random stranger. Instead, after Ortho would drop him off at the school therapist's office, Idio would stow away to the mirror chamber and hop in a gate until his session time was over. This worked well enough the first few times, and Idio was even able to game in peace in the safety of the coffin until his therapist started reporting his absences. The next time Idia stowed away, Ortho found him and dragged him back to the counselor's office, not allowing Idia's excuses of his actions actually being a meditation practice to sway him. And the Ignihide house warden has had to actually endure his therapy sessions ever since. Our next headline was submitted by Junior Detective of Waynes and Puppets, who's reporting on this story. NRC student reprimanded after throwing sausage at peer. Nowhere on Night Raven College's campus is safe from shenanigans, quite frankly, but the staff, especially the ghosts who work there, are truly getting irritated by how often the cafeteria is the epicenter of such nonsense. On this particular afternoon, one of the tables had been getting increasingly and distractingly louder, with their argument reaching a peak in the form of one of the students getting a sausage thrown directly into their face by another student they'd been sitting with who wasn't even involved in the initial argument. No one knows exactly what the disagreement was over, nor why it had escalated to such a degree that food items went flying, but the point stands that such events took place. Luckily or unluckily, depending on your perspective, a teacher witnessed the back half of this altercation, including the sausage slinging, and was able to dole out punishment to the perpetrator. Our suspects in this case are Jade, who has previously assaulted peers with meat-based food items; Ace, who has been known to goof a little too close to the sun when provoked; or you, who has hit their limit on dealing with the everything they're subjected to on the daily. Who done it? Now, I love a good callback, but I would hate to suspect Jade twice, and you is much too pleasant to chuck a sausage at someone, I think. Which only leaves Ace, so I'm gonna have to go with him. But let's see what our junior detective had to say. Turns out the culprit was you, but it wasn't entirely their fault, because the brain cell boys had been back at it again. The freshman grouping had been getting into an argument about something or other. However, despite not paying attention to the actual contents of the conversation, you couldn't avoid the increasing volume of their friends' heckles. This was getting to them, combining with the other stressors they had been subjected to, causing them to become overstimulated. You, thusly, found themselves picking up a sausage from their plate to have it smack directly into the eyes of Ace, always the instigator Tripolo. However, you hadn't accounted on one Ashton Vargas passing directly behind them at this precise moment to give a verbal tirade in the aftermath of this action. They also hadn't accounted for the lecture to be somewhat unexpected for the situation. Rather than scold you for assaulting a peer with a food item, Vargas's grievance was how the magicless mortal was misusing such a protein-rich item by turning it into a projectile when it could have been helping them build up their physique instead. You was thus left in a state of being absolutely done with the absurdity of this alternate world that they had been brought to all those months ago, while Grim was happily scarfing down the sausage from where it had fallen on the cafeteria floor. Thank you so much, OfWaynes and Puppets, for your delightful report. But now it is on to our next headline. Skies over Sage's Island turn pink. NRC student to blame. One evening, the skies above Sage's Island turned a brilliant hue of pink near sunset. This would have been fine normally if the color was natural, but instead it looked as though a color filter had been placed over the entire sky. Everything was pink. The clouds, the birds, even the setting sun. Everything. The unnatural sight started over NRC and spread to the rest of Sage's Island, causing a bit of alarm along with a lot of awe. NRC staff quickly pinpointed the originating point of the color-changing magic and rushed to the sports field where they were met with an eclectic group of students all staring at the sky, except for a small group of arguing individuals. These chatty fellows were interrogated, and the true culprit was found. The culprit received a small lecture and was made to remove the pink from the sky, but no harm was caused, so no further discipline was necessary. Our suspects in this case are Malleus, who was known to have fantastical magical power, Ace, who was seen arguing with Deuce on the sports field, or Deuce, who was seen arguing with Ace on that same exact sports field. Who done it? Unfortunately, Malleus's power was too great for the feuding Ace and Deuce, and in an effort to help you, the poor boy turned the entire sky pink instead of just the spell drive disc. You see, Ace and Deuce were practicing spell drive on the sports field with Grim. However, instead of grabbing the disc, Deuce had accidentally changed its color. Ace began to berate him for his messy spell work before the two devolved into a full-blown argument. Grim even started arguing with the both of them when the novelty of scoring goals on the feuding duo wore off, resulting in quite the scene. Malleus happened to be walking by, so you called out to the dragon to ask him if he could show the group how it is done, but they failed to specify exactly what it was that Malleus was supposed to do, so Malleus assumed that the color-changing magic was the problem. As such, he cast a spell on the disc as he launched it into the sky, attempting to show the now slightly scared Heart Shackle group how to multicast simple spells. But he overdid it a little, and the color change extended into the sky as well. Thankfully, the residents of Sage's Island laughed the incident off as a well-meaning prank, and since Malleus quickly reversed his spell, no lasting damage was done. The dragon was a bit embarrassed to have gone overboard while attempting to settle a petty argument, but was relieved when the prefect assured him that no one was upset by the slip-up. Our next headline was sent in by Junior Detective TRIXiStage, who is reporting on the tale of NRC student faints on campus. But don't worry, nothing got hurt but sanity. One night, an overworked Scabravia student was walking back to the dorms after his remedial class. The night was so quiet you could hear the gentle chirps of crickets, at least until a large crash was heard behind the trees on Main Street. When this student went over to investigate the noise, he came face to face with the person who had made it from presumably falling out of one of the trees. After the student checked his fallen fellow's status by looking him over, the overworked student locked onto the fallen student's hand before promptly fainting. The mystery student brought the fainted individual back to his dorm to rest, and since no one was harmed besides the fainted student's sanity, the incident resulted in no disciplinary action. Our suspect for the fallen student are Ortho, who had been taking a late night stroll, Rook, who had been investigating some nocturnal critters, and Leona, who had been spotted sleeping in a tree earlier that day. Who done it? This is a rather peculiar case, as we don't really know what it was in our suspect's hand that caused the other student to faint. But given that the fainter was from Scarabia and the amount of fainting incidents NRC has had in the past, it was likely a bug. Given what each of our suspects were doing, it's safe to rule out Ortho, but between Rook and Leona, I don't really see a clear answer. What say you, Junior Detective? According to the report, our tree-climbing kiddo was in fact Rook. Rook had apparently been minding his own business when he got asked by an acquaintance to search for their pet cricket. Rook graciously accepted the challenge and went out that night to look in Main Street's trees to see if he could spot the little fellow. He had climbed into one that sounded similar to the described cries of the pet, but somehow slipped and fell into the bushes below. Jamil Viper, our Scarabia student in question, went to investigate the noise and found Rook fallen but fine. The same could not be said, however, for the pet cricket that Rook had accidentally smooshed in his hand during the fall, as he had attempted to grab onto the branch the cricket was on to stop himself from falling, but this just resulted in smooshed bug juice. Jamil, seeing the smooshed bug juice, fainted on the spot, so Rook took him back to Scarabia to rest. The nightmare was not over for Jamil, though, as this cricket had belonged to another Scarabia student, and the dorm was holding a small funeral for the cricket the next day, which was nearly set ablaze, but thankfully, Kaleem was able to intervene in time so the mourners could grieve peacefully. R.I.P. Bob the Cricket, you will be missed. Thank you so much, TRIXiStage, for your lovely report. Our next headline does contain a little bit of spoilers, so viewer discretion is advised. In the case of Pumpkin Mosaic Pop-Up Puzzles NRC. A few weeks before Halloween, NRC students were stunned to see a whole mosaic of pumpkins set up along Main Street. The spectacle was fantastical, however, no one knew how the pumpkins got there or why the display was set up so far ahead of time. Additionally, several students did not report to their morning classes, and after teachers realized that every class was missing students, the campus was locked down until they could be found. Despite the investigative efforts of the staff, no evidence of the students running away or otherwise leaving could be found, so Head Mage Dyer Crowley began preparing a long-winded apology speech. Luckily for our resident bird, the next morning all the missing students returned to campus with a haunting tale. They all alleged that a specter came to them in the middle of the night and turned them into pumpkins, asking them to repent for their misdeeds, before setting them up as the display on Main Street. Despite the stories all having the same description of the culprit, no ghost or mortal being on campus matched it, and there were still pumpkins on Main Street, so the students were assumed to have taken off as a group, weaving this fantastical tale as an excuse. Even though they were punished and the event was put out of the staff's mind, several speculative rumors began to circulate among students. So our alleged suspects in this case are the ramshackle ghosts, who are known to cause a bit of magical mischief every now and again, Lilia, who is known to pull pranks on unsuspecting fellows, and a ghost the NRC students have dubbed the Pumpkin King, a legend spawned from the witness testimony surrounding this incident. Who done it? Unfortunately, none of these culprits were formally charged. However, there was one common quality between all of the affected students that led our investigative team to speculate that the culprit might have been the ramshackle ghosts. You see, each of the students supposedly turned into pumpkins had reportedly bullied or attempted to bully the ramshackle prefect. So our team figured the most logical culprits must have been the ramshackle ghosts. But during our investigators' spiritual questioning, the air got even more unreasonably cold. The sound of dead leaves being crushed underfoot rang in their ears despite them being inside a building, and a voice whispered a very polite boo behind them. Even the ramshackle ghost seemed to be surprised by this new spectral intruder, a fact which startled our reporter even further. This new ghost did match the description of the culprit the skipping students had, and the specter boldly proclaimed they were in fact behind the pumpkin display. When asked if they also turned the students into pumpkins, the ghost merely smiled, offering no further comment on the matter. They instead asked our team many questions about Halloween and if we had ever considered giving tricks instead of treats. From this interaction, the Investigative Bureau cannot definitively say that this Pumpkin King was the culprit behind this incident, but we can confirm that they exist. So as far as we know, they are guilty in this case. However, the process of indicting a ghost is much too difficult for the head mage or us to go ahead with, so all we can do is caution you lovely viewers to not bully Ramshackle Dorm's prefect, lest you too also get turned into a pumpkin. Our next headline was submitted by Junior Detective Allie M, who is reporting on the tale NRC students' snacks stolen by small animals. During lunch at NRC, several squirrels and small birds appeared in the kitchen, seemingly summoned by the smell of risotto. The critters moved the entire pot into the courtyard with alarming precision, up until the last minute when Sebek Zigvolt attempted to intercept them. This caused the animals to lose their grip on the pot and spill some of the hot risotto onto Sebek, causing him to yell out in pain. Staff responded to the cries and began investigating the incident, determining that the animals were trying to take this food to another student. Since the culprit was unaware of the animals' actions and not directly involved in summoning them for the food, they were let off with a warning. Our suspects in this case are Silver, who is known to be liked by critters, Jack, who is known to have a friendly rivalry with wild animals, and Apple, who had been practicing his singing in the courtyard. Who was the cause of this unfortunate mishap? I'm gonna just say Silver, since we know the food in question was risotto and Sebek was also there, presumably looking for Silver. But let's see what our junior detective had to say. According to their report, the suspect was in fact Silver, who had fallen asleep in the courtyard after a rather rough morning of strenuous PE practice. The nearby woodland creatures heard his stomach rumble in his sleep, and after being unable to wake him, decided to take matters into their own paws and wings. The ghost chefs were so impressed by their coordination that they didn't think to stop them from stealing the pot, and onlookers thought the same. It was only when Sebek arrived on the scene, looking for Silver and not paying attention to much else, did things go awry. Sebek was not seriously hurt by the hot dish, and Silver did not intentionally summon the critters to do this, so the staff had no one to punish but the squirrels. But with no way to really do that, Silver was let off with a warning instead. Thank you so much, Allie M, for your wonderful report. Now, just on to our last headline. NRC student causes IRL duplication glitch, floods Mostro Lounge with shrimp. One evening, staff at the Mostro Lounge reported a guest who was staying too long to management, but when approached, the student claimed they were going to leave as soon as they finished their cocktail shrimp. Seeing only a few shrimp left on the glass, the manager on duty, Floyd, accepted this response and went back to terrorizing the kitchen staff. An hour later, wait staff complained again to Floyd, who returned to the student to investigate this issue. Seeing this same amount of shrimp on the student's glass, Floyd became annoyed, but the student pointed to their shrimp tails as evidence they had in fact continued to eat and were just about done now. True to their word, there were more shrimp tails than before, and Floyd got a curious idea. Why not watch and see just how long this little magical charade was going to go on for? When he got bored of watching the student add to their mountain of tails, Floyd used his unique magic to deflect the duplication spell, but it ended up getting directed at somebody else's seafood plate. Frustrated, the student continued to cast the spell, resulting in more and more duplicates of various seafood dishes until Floyd could no longer contain his laughter or keep up his special magic, and the final duplication cast out of anger created so many duplicate shrimp the lounge became flooded with them. Azul was not pleased with this scene and made Floyd and the student both clean up the flood as punishment. Our suspects in this case are Ruggy, who may have wanted a bit more time away from the chaos of Savannah Claw, Sebek, who perhaps wanted to save the table for Malleus, or Rook, who may have been taking notes of his queries who were present in the lounge that evening. Who done it? Our duplication wizard was none other than Sebek, who was in fact attempting to hold the table for Malleus. The dragon had expressed interest in visiting the lounge after Azul had given Lilia a coupon as part apology for the spell drive incident and part promotion of the lounge to Diasomnia students. Sebek, wishing to give his lord the very best, arranged a meeting at the lounge for later that evening, but instead of making a reservation, decided to pick the best table himself a few hours before the scheduled time. He figured he could hold the table himself until Malleus, Lilia, and Silver arrived, but was unaware of the 1 drink per hour rule. Assuming he wouldn't get kicked out for not finishing his food in time, Sebek continued to duplicate his shrimp so that he'd have an excuse to stick around without spending too many thaw marks. Thankfully for him, Floyd was in a good enough mood to allow the charade to go on, but was also bored enough by it to intervene himself. Malleus did show up at the lounge, but was greeted promptly by a wave of pink as duplicated shrimps hurled towards him from Sebek's table. Azul profusely apologized for the mess and Floyd's lack of decorum, and both he and Lilia insisted that Sebek clean up his own mess after Malleus moved to whisk it away with magic. The poor crocodile and eel stayed up quite late that night, Sebek even vowing to not eat another shrimp again. The Investigative Bureau will keep you informed as to whether Sebek keeps his word. And on that note, Floyd is no longer being collared by Riddle. The length of Riddle's punishment was a total of 4 weeks, 3 days, and 7 hours, which would have gone on for longer too if the head mage hadn't stepped in to request the collar's removal himself. Floyd is free. For now. And that is that. Another 10 cases solved thanks to the hard work of all of our detectives. Thank you again to all of our junior detectives for their wondrous insight into these matters, and thank you, lovely viewers, for making it this far into the video. How many culprits did you get right? How many did you get wrong? And did you enjoy this content? Perhaps desiring more like it? Let me know all of that and more in the comments below, but if comments aren't your thing, you could always like and subscribe instead. However, before you go, I just have to remind you that you're amazing and I hope you have a wonderful day.